Welcome to the Learning and Teaching Systemic Therapy podcast, the official podcast of the Society for the Teaching of Marriage and Family Therapy, STMFT in short. I'm your host, Dr. Sofia Georgiadou. I created STMFT and this podcast as an antidote to the isolation I experienced as an early career academic. I also created STMFT and this podcast as a space to allow myself and my colleagues to share resources and bridge the way we do systemic therapy with the way we teach systemic therapy in our classrooms. So today I have a fascinating discussion lined up for you. Our discussion features one brilliant PhD student, and she's gearing up for the next phase of her academic journey. And we also have one MFT professor who has navigated the path of academia and is here to share her insights. So here with us today, we have Dr. Mary Nedela. She's an assistant professor in the Marriage and Family Therapy program at Central Connecticut State University. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in Connecticut and Michigan, a clinical fellow of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, and an AMFT approved supervisor. Dr. Nedela received her master's degree in child development and family studies with a specialization in marriage and family therapy from Purdue Calumet, now Purdue Northwest. She received her doctoral degree in human development with a specialization in marriage and family therapy from Virginia Tech. Dr. Nedela has taught several undergraduate and graduate courses in marriage and family therapy, human development, and psychology. Additionally, she has comprehensive clinical experience working in various clinical settings, including in-home programs, inpatient-style settings, and outpatient settings. She's particularly passionate about LGBTQ+ individuals and their relationships with family, friends, and partners. Additionally, she's driven to increase the quantity and quality of clinical services available to LGBTQ+ communities. Her specific research area of interest includes relational well-being among bi+ individuals and their partners. Good. Our PhD student guest today is Joyce Miles Jacquote. Joyce is an LMFT supervisor here in Texas, correct?
Yes.
And maybe some other states, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's also a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and she's going into her third year as a DMFT student at National University's Marriage and Family Therapy program. On top of all of that, she's the owner of a solo private practice, Overcoming Miles Counseling, PLLC, which offers telehealth services in Colorado, Texas, Utah, and Washington. In her private practice, she focuses on providing therapy to romantic partners, queer platonic partners, and families, however they may present or define themselves. Her therapeutic passions are serving the communities that she's a part of, including the Black and Brown communities and queer communities. When not providing therapy, Joyce is providing clinical supervision to LMFT Associates and MFT graduate interns, as well as giving presentations, appearing on podcasts, and writing blogs to educate others. So in this episode, we'll be exploring some insightful questions that have been pre-sourced from Joyce, our PhD student guest, which will be answered by Dr. Nedela, our professor in MFT today. I'll be facilitating the conversation by sharing these questions, and I'm excited to hear Joyce's experiences leading to each of her questions, and also Dr. Nedela's perspectives and lessons learned. So let's dive into our first question. And that is, Dr. Nedela, if you have a client caseload in addition to your course load as an educator, what have you found to be helpful when it comes to balancing both along with your personal life?
So this is an interesting question because I had to really kind of think about multiple aspects of this. When I first started as an assistant professor, I started in January 2020, which was the height of COVID, or right before COVID started. It was a really challenging
Yeah.
time to start an academic career. So, but the other part of it too was that there was a high need for clinical work in the height of COVID. And so I did have a small caseload that I did virtually for a bit when I moved here to Connecticut. And that was probably about for the first year and a half that I was doing that. It became very challenging to do because I was choosing to do this on the weekends because I needed to spend my weekdays teaching and
Yeah.
going to meetings and everything else academia includes. So that was sort of the day that I would do it mostly on Sundays actually. And that worked well for my wife's schedule because she was working on Sundays as well. So I was kind of doing that for a bit. But that was really challenging because then I was getting burnt out. So
Yeah.
Mm.
I started to take on a little bit more roles in my assistant professor position as well. I'm also the clinical coordinator of our program. So once I took that on, I realized that I needed to really devote more time to getting that set up the way that worked for me and for the program. And that required a lot of effort and time. And so I decided, in addition to noticing those signs of burnout, just kind of like dreading sessions and
Mm.
really having some difficulty conceptualizing what I wanted to do and responding in helpful ways in session. I recognized that I needed to look at my primary position and kind of take some time away from clinical work. And the other piece of that too is I was recognizing that a lot of the work that I did was becoming my identity, and it was becoming my sole identity. And that was another big area where I just kind of said I needed to step away. So I did that, and it also aligned with not being very satisfied with my job, what I was doing, because I was working for a large online agency, and so I decided to step away from all of that. And that was a blessing because it was just something that I needed to do. And so since then I haven't had that. So that was about a year and a half into that, and so 3 years ago or so, I've stopped doing that. I do plan to return in the future. Right now, I've got some personal things that are going on that don't really help me devote time to that. But I do feel like I'm at a point now that I have a really good groove going with my position. And so I kind of understand what I'm doing there. I feel really confident with what I'm doing, and I don't feel the intense energy being put towards that. So at some point I would like to return to that. But what I do know about that in terms of balancing is really understanding what my needs are. And so going into that from the experience that I had, I recognize that I need to be really clear about, like, I need to have a small caseload. I can't have it be big. Um, and it's probably going to be virtual because that's what's going to fit my needs the most. And really just also minimizing the overhead of business management. That's not really my forte, and I know that I'm not strong at that. So, understanding where my strengths are and where I can devote that energy has been uh, the biggest area of understanding how to balance those needs. So yeah.
So much. Joyce,
I'm
tell us your thoughts. Yeah, I'm curious what you're
yeah,
thinking as you're
I'm
listening to us.
curious. How do you feel like your clinical skills have been since you aren't actively practicing? I guess that's one of the things
Yeah.
I'm concerned about because I've heard other professors say, no, you need to keep a small caseload so you can keep your clinical skills up. But then you hear how much it is to do both. So I'm wondering what's your kind of viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, I am very pro, like, I want to still have that practice because I do agree. I think that being active in clinical work while you're teaching is a very important conduit of knowing what's going on in the real world, so to speak, because there's a lot that we teach that is from the ideal perspective. And that's not always what's going on in reality. And so being able to connect to that is really important. So I also do supervision. And so that's how I've been able to really connect with sort of what's going on in the real world and clinical settings. And I feel as though my skills have been maintained because of that. Because I also give a lot of examples. So like I will respond as if, so it's almost like role playing kind of thing when I do supervision, both with my students and also for licensure. So I think that it's still there. I'd like to hope it's still there. But it's also been a concern of mine too. And I think that's part of a drive to want to continue to go back at some point.
Joyce,
Definitely.
with your DMFT, you're looking at, like, what's the dream, I guess? I'm wondering, are you looking at maintaining your private practice and doing something else in relation to education?
Yeah. So my dream is to have a teaching practice,
Okay.
more so like you come through for practicum internship and then you get pre-licensed and you work here. And then once you're fully licensed, you have the chance to, go wherever your wings may take you, but really focus on that early career part. I find that, and it's nothing against it, but I find a lot of early career is spent in inpatient psych or ILP or PHP, and that's not for everyone. And so having this additional option of like, hey, this is one way you can get those clinical skills, that experience, that knowledge.
Absolutely. The next question that Joyce submitted here for this discussion today was for you, Dr. Nedela, what resources do you recommend for an early career instructor to learn how to create a meaningful syllabus for the courses that they will teach?
I think the biggest help that I was able to receive was asking for examples. And so I would always get examples from my mentors, even from my peers. When I was at Virginia Tech, we had a teaching class essentially. And so as if you were doing a teaching assistantship, you were required to be in this class, and we all created syllabi. And so we would pass, those syllabi across, and we would have a lot of resources for each other. And that was really helpful. But our professors were also really interested in helping us be better. And so if you have connections with professors, whether it's MFT or not, having those ideas can help you become more creative, and it can also help you kind of see what it is that you want to do in a classroom as well as in a syllabus, what kind of policies you want. So you can also take a look at the class syllabi that you had from your courses, right? Really take a critical look at that. Like, how did that help me learn? How did it not? What did I like? What did I not like? And also, if you have a teaching philosophy, that's a really good place to drive that from. So if, those syllabi fit that teaching philosophy, like mine is very, experiential in nature. And so I like to have a lot of things that really get people active and have takeaways from. And so that's something that really fits with my teaching philosophy. And so having that to start with can really ensure that you're connecting the content, the assignments, the readings, all of that to what you want them to take away. And the other important thing too is also to make sure that you're aligned with COAMFT standards, especially if you're teaching at a COAMFT accredited program. Knowing those standards can help you have assignments that connect to them and aligns with them. Another good resource is there's tons of really great stuff on pedagogy out there, books. Bell Hooks has a lot of really great stuff. I forget what her good one was, Teaching to Transform or something of that nature, I think.
Teaching to Transgress, I think it was.
Thank you.
Okay.
So she's got a lot of great stuff about teaching, just generally speaking, that you can fold into then your syllabi for what do you want your expectations to be, right?
Okay.
what kinds of classroom management techniques do you want to include in there? I'm also a really big fan of being very transparent and all of the work that I do. So I like to have the policies outlined really clearly from the get-go. And so you can look for examples of that too. How are you going to manage those things? What does it mean to send an email to you, whatever that looks like, right? And then also understanding that it would be helpful to have different learning styles be addressed in your syllabi. So particularly around the assignments that are outlined in there. So I like to have different things in my syllabi in my classes because it's I want to get at different people's ways of learning. And so that's an important piece. So referencing some, kind of like learning strategies and processes and that kind of content can be helpful as well. And then the last thing that I think is a really helpful resource, a lot of universities have like centers for teaching and learning or something of that nature that can really help you finalize a syllabi, give you some suggestions, whatever. They've got a lot of really helpful resources.
Definitely, those were more resources than I had ever been aware of. So that's helpful. I know for me, looking at syllabus creation, especially because different positions ask you for one as you're applying, I was like, what does that look like?
That's interesting. That must be a new requirement because I haven't been asked that before.
Is this for, I wonder, Joyce, is this for adjunct positions or
Yes.
adjunct positions? Yeah, they ask for syllabus. Okay, as if adjunct professors are just not
Going to
doing
have
enough,
one.
Yeah, they're just
Right.
they're just not doing enough. They need also submit.
Let's overburden them more.
Yeah, let's overburden them more and underpay them just a little bit more every time. I love what Dr. Nedela shared, but I don't know that every doctoral program in our field actually offers a teaching or pedagogy class.
No, it's pretty rare. I was
rare,
very
right?
lucky.
I certainly don't remember having one, and I feel like I could have benefited from one for sure. The one thing I did that was transformational for me, I wanted to share with Joyce. I attended a lot of programming from CIRTL.net. That's the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching, and Learning. Although they're focusing on STEM learning, like a lot of the programming has to do with STEM, some of the like first year faculty academy and syllabus or teaching philosophy crafting, some of these programming is actually it provides such good foundation for your educator life, right? So I think I wouldn't necessarily limit myself starting out as an educator, just looking within the MFT space for resources. I would go into psychology. I would go into centers for teaching and learning that do not necessarily have a focus on systemic therapy. But once you have the basics of like, what do you need to craft a syllabus, or how do you start from scratch? Like if you don't inherit a syllabus for a class, right? Looking at outcomes for that class, connecting them to assessments for that class and learning activities each week. Those are things I learned in these classes and courses I took through CIRTL. And I tailored them to the MFT courses that I was teaching. So I learned the foundation and then I adapted it to what I was teaching in our field.
No, I like that. That's a great idea.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would echo that too, because there was another thing that Virginia Tech offered is they have graduate certificates. And one of the certificates that I was a part of was preparing the future professoriate. And so it was a series of classes that you could take on basically getting into academia as your
Oh.
profession. And it was really wonderful and lovely. I'm so happy that I had that opportunity. And I remember one of the classes specifically, we were with, any graduate student who was doing graduate level teaching, or I should say graduate assistantships that we're teaching. And we would review each other's material. And so it was nice to see things across the aisle and what other people were doing and how creative they could be. And then kind of looking, okay, how does that fit for MFT? How does that fit for anything that I'm trying to teach these folks? So yeah, I think we can find inspiration in lots of places.
Well, those are definitely great resources. I wonder, going along with syllabus, how do you guys critique yourself or integrate feedback you've gotten from that semester into changes that need to be made in the syllabus? Because, hopefully syllabus are not static, we're changing, growing. So how do you go about that process?
Yeah, it's definitely important to review the syllabus every time you teach it because things change. You could have a different idea. Every time I teach one of my courses, because I teach basically the same ones every semester. Everyone's all the same ones in the fall, all the same ones in the spring. And so I will always look right before, as I'm prepping for that semester, what were my evals from the last time I taught it? What were some of the things that were said? I'll even write down throughout the semester anything that a student has said or ideas that I come up with that I want to take note of as I'm prepping for the next year. And so I just always make sure to reference those. I don't always change everything. It might be slight changes. It might not change anything at all. But it's at least I have another look at it just to kind of see, is this doing what I want it to be doing? Is this assignment actually benefiting the students, or is it just something that I thought would, but it's not really? I've had plenty of those, so I've gotten rid of some assignments or revamped them. So it's always helpful to look back at those evals. We do evals at the end of the semester, but I also do midterm eval as well. So I kind of if I need to shift anything in the middle of the semester, I will do that too.
I like that idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna second midterm evaluations, but because those sometimes it can take a while depending on the institution to get your results back from those midterm evaluations. And then it's like the end of the semester all of a sudden. I am super annoying to my students for seeking feedback from them after every class. I have this exit ticket and they know it. At the end of the class, they do the little QR code and there's 3 questions. It's a very short survey. One thing you take away from the class, one question that remained, one thing that would make the class better.
Love that.
So I get a lot of information from those.
I bet you do.
Yeah, and in the beginning though I didn't. Like people would say, "Oh, class was okay today," or I don't have any questions, or I think they didn't think that I was gonna even look at what they were telling me. Now sometimes depending on the cohort, of course, but sometimes they won't even wait for the survey. They'll just tell me, you know what, that textbook, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm dreading, so they I think they learn that I'm very feedback driven. So speaking about changing your syllabus like midway through the semester, this has happened for me actually. I had a talk with my students about what's working well and what would serve them best in their learning. And so we rearrange some readings or we rearrange some assignments to make them more experiential, put in more role play instead of doing like a longer reflection on paper. So things like that, I might change even the grade distribution depending on effort from the student for each assignment. So I have made changes to my syllabus definitely midway through the semester. I'm on a quest to make syllabus meaningful, like you said, Joyce, and I think that's a very aspirational goal for sure, because I don't know about you, but I as a graduate student, I would only focus on the assignment section of the syllabus. and like everything else would just fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And then I would hope
I
that I would
had
find someone.
professors that would hide stuff in the syllabuses, so I always made sure to read my whole thing.
I've done that too. It's a fun
Wow.
little like hide and seek thing that you can do
Yes.
sometimes. Yeah.
Like a
They're like,
random
no, I want those
sentence or
10 extra
something.
points.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Okay. So they would give you bonus points for finding something random that was embedded in the
Bonus
syllabus.
points, or another one that a couple of them did was if you found the random thing and sent them what they asked for, you can use it to get out of one quiz or something like that.
Great
So
idea.
Very cool.
I always read it
Um,
after that. I'm like, I'm not missing anything else.
I love it. All right. So going on to the next question, and this is about online teaching. Joyce, I'm not sure if you're applying maybe for online teaching jobs right now, but the question is, what tips do you have, Dr. Nedela, for keeping a class engaged when teaching online synchronous course?
I'm glad you asked this question. And before I answer it, because I want to say that a lot of folks in our field and not in our field, right, are thinking that it's not a good idea to teach online, particularly anything related to therapy or counseling, generally speaking. But I think that there's a lot of utility that could happen, and I think we learned that in COVID. I think that
Mhm.
we also learned that it can be draining, right? And so that there is a need to have some variation in what we're doing. I think that's the biggest answer to this question is variation in materials and learning materials. Help them do things differently. Have breakout sessions where they're practicing some of their skills, because I always bring it as like a telehealth, right? You're doing
Mhm.
virtual therapy now with your classmates, quote unquote. But try to keep it as experiential as possible, because they're going to be more engaged, right? So really practicing their skills, having it be discussion based, or kind of like do it almost like a flipped classroom type of thing, where it's like you're not lecturing. They review all that material before they come
Mm.
to the class time. And that's when your class time is really devoted to that experiential activity based kinds of things. This one, my next suggestion is somewhat controversial for some folks, but I say require your cameras to be on.
Mm.
Or at least at some point they should be on throughout the class period. And being aware of their surroundings when they're in class, and because I keep coming back to the height of COVID, there was people in their beds and in their
Mm.
pajamas, and everybody was kind of that way to some degree. But at some point, you really want them to be in a space where they're going to be primed for learning. That's the
Right.
point of it. And so you want to have it set up so that their engagement is connected to maybe their grade in somehow, or something that really kind of makes it so that they are invested in being there, showing up, and being kind of ready to go. And I always say, make sure you're having fun, because if you're not having fun, nobody's going to want to be there. And the more fun you have as an instructor, that's going to be contagious. And that comes through the screen too. So, helping them kind of have some fun with it. So, making things personal to them if you can, showing them you care, right? Asking at the top of the class, how are things going, right? Well, tell me a little bit what's
Right.
going well. And anything that can really help them take control of their learning, I think is really beneficial.
Yeah.
No, I agree with all of that. And honestly, yes, the camera on is controversial. I know for me, I probably have been that person that's pushed back about the camera being
Oh,
on.
me too.
So realizing that there are other me's probably out there. So
Mhm. Yeah, because if the camera's off, it's very easy to disengage. Um, and I understand that there's sometimes a need for that, and we all are human beings, and things happen. And so that's why maybe like at some point the cameras need to be on. You can have the camera off if you really need to, take care of something. And you're not going to be penalized for that or whatever, but really just being mindful that, it's harder to feel a connection with somebody when the camera's off. And that goes both ways, right? When you're teaching as an instructor, like if you're teaching to a black screen, that's really difficult because you don't know what's going on, if people are getting it, or if they have questions, or if they have weird facial expressions. Like, you don't know. You don't have that level of engagement like you do in the classroom.
No, I definitely had that experience recently at a presentation I was doing online. I was so thankful for the one person who had the camera on. That's like the person I watched. So I definitely understand more so now, like, oh no, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. Interesting. Being on the other side of this equation, Joyce, now you're like, wow, camera on really, really helps with engagement. Yeah, I second the points that Dr. Nedela made around establishing kind of expectations and etiquette for the class. Might be good to work with the students to create this like a community guideline. I do that for online and for in-person courses. Like, what does it mean to be there with each other? What does that look like? And in terms of creating engagement, I mean, at the height of COVID, like Dr. Nedela, I had students who would, one time I had a student who was unloading their dishwasher while being
folding laundry.
Yeah, folding. Yeah. So I think we're moving away from that for sure.
Yeah.
And so, but with the integration of so many different apps with Zoom, I find that just by knowing a little, like I'm not a super technological savvy person, but just knowing like a couple of apps, maybe Mentimeter for those like cute clouds that people can make by answering a question. How do you feel today? Or, what's your goal for this class? Something like that.
Even just the chat feature can be so
the chat feature,
useful.
Use an emoji to tell me how you feel today, and then it's like all the melting emojis or the exploding head emoji, in the middle of the semester. I also use Poll Everywhere for little quizzes throughout, like, let's check your understanding about something. It's like 4 or 5 questions really quickly about what we're talking about, right? Especially if I'm presenting something or sharing more information, just because death by PowerPoint is even more likely when you're in an online environment, So yeah, I think there are ways, and it really depends on how many students do you have in class. Is there a program or university policy around camera on, camera off? And that's something to ask, for sure, perhaps in a second interview, like if you're interviewing for an instructor position. Engaging a little bit with educational technology to see what can you do to create something that it's not just human conversation on screen, Yeah. All right. So next to last question I have here from Joyce is, are there specific skills or experiences that you, Dr. Nedela, would recommend an early career professor to focus on to advance in this field?
So I think about this from a perspective of kind of a full-time tenure track kind of position, but I think some of this could be relevant for any kind of adjunct or part-time. I think the biggest thing for me has been advancing in the profession, just sort of generally, has been getting involved in organizations. So as a member of AMFT, I'm also a part of our geographic interest network of the CTA MFT. I'm also a leader in the Queer and Trans Advocacy Network. And so, volunteering for those positions can really help you make connections and also then kind of see where you want to go, how you want to make change, particularly because there's certainly a lot of ways that we could advocate for advancement in the field. And so, getting in those positions can be really helpful with that.
Okay.
Becoming a reviewer for journals is really great too. That's something that, as a tenure track person, can count towards my tenure, right? So can the leadership positions. But it also kind of helps me connect with kind of what's going on in research, and helps me kind of feel like I'm giving back to some of that work as well. Presenting at conferences, sounds like you're doing a lot of that already. That's
Right.
always a good one. But I definitely say, like, really make sure you're doing this within the passions of your field, right? So like the things that bring you joy, and really saying yes to those things that bring you joy, and also learning to say no to those things that you don't want to do, even if they do bring you joy. And you may not always love the tasks that you're given, especially within a tenure track position. There's, committees that I'm a part of that I never thought I would be a part of. But I'm bringing my joy to them too. And so, I'm a part of the IT committee for, at CCSU. And, I don't have like the most amount of knowledge on IT, but I'm bringing my needs and my understanding of graduate level education needs, and kind of talking about that, and bringing that back to our department, and you're trying to make that connection in any way that I can. And then I also say, use your voice, but also learn when to not use your voice. Because there's sometimes when it's just not necessary, or it will make things more complicated, or it's kind of picking your battles sort of thing. There's a lot of battles in academia that can and should be picked. And there's a lot of battles that aren't worth your time. And so kind of understanding some of that, and that is a bit dependent on each individual academic system. And kind of understanding that is going to be really helpful to you. And then collaborating, right? Collaborating with people at your university, outside of your university, really maintaining those healthy work relationships, because not all of them are healthy. And academia is not the healthiest system out there. And so there's a lot of things that could bring you to a place of burnout, or unhappiness. And so, having boundaries with those things and those people is going to be great, but don't burn bridges, right? And so, because you never know who you're going to need and when you're going to need them. So that's sort of like typical kind of like working relationship stuff, and understanding the system around you and knowing how to navigate that.
That makes a lot of sense. And definitely, yes, you never know who you're going to bump into. I've had that several times. And I tell supervisees all that time, you never know who's going to be in that next position. So don't want to rub elbows the wrong way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would second that as well. It feels like we're a village of sorts, of MFTs, and somehow across state lines, we come to know different people and their work, or different institutions and their work. Yeah, I also remember just how much of a solitary experience writing a dissertation was. And so getting out of that mindset of doing research alone was a shift for me. I am such a big proponent of cold emails. I literally feel like I have nothing to lose if someone never answers to me. I think I was a lot more intimidated to do that when I was an international graduate student, about, I don't know, 12 years ago now. I just remember feeling like, oh, what if I bother them by asking them a question, or asking them to collaborate with me on a project, or asking to be part of their research group, or whatever, whatever the case was, whoever I wanted to email. If I were to go back, that's what I would do more of. I would reach out to more people, thinking that, you know what, you're not going to break my heart if you don't answer my email, but if you do answer my email, and a lot of people do, I think actually people feel flattered in academia when someone is reaching out and they're asking about their work. And so
Right.
most people actually feel inclined to answer unless they're super, super busy. And then, your email kind of falls through the cracks. But most of the time, I have found that people will actually respond to you, even in brief, and they might even meet with you and offer some insights, or that's how I think you establish your first mentors that are not
Okay.
part of your, professor team or your peers, or, your first supervisor or whatnot. I think some people have this tendency to connect more than others, of course. And so for introverted people or neurodivergent people, that might be more of a challenge. But I would say, whether it's in writing or verbally or on Zoom or in person, find a way to connect with folks. Find your peeps. Find your people that you're passionate about the same type of research or the same type of teaching that you want to do, right? If you want to create inclusive spaces, who are the people that are also love to do the same type of work? So that's what I would do more of, I think, if I were to go back during my PhD days. Yeah, I didn't do so much of that because I was afraid to reach out.
I definitely have that. You don't have anything to lose, but I don't think I even considered reaching out via email. So have to keep that in mind. It was more like when I'm at conferences, it's like I had nothing to lose, but
Sure.
email never even crossed my mind to reach out that way. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last question for today, unless something else comes up, of course, in our conversation. What strategies do you find most effective for building connection and collaboration with your peers in the field? And I think that we already started talking about that a little bit today. But is there anything else, Dr. Nedela, that you
I would absolutely agree with what you just said. Really finding people who have those same passions as you, and kind of make that introduction. And it sounds like that's something that you're already doing, is at conferences, connecting with people. I did that when I was still on my doc program. I knew a couple of people who were doing research on particularly bisexuality at that time. And I just kind of went to them and said, hey, I'm interested in this. I would love to work with you some more. What do you have? What do you have going? What can I do to help? And that has grown over time, and I still have some of those connections. And so I think that's a really great thing, is to reach out in whatever way that you can. And assess your connections, right? Who do you have in your life that's reliable? Who isn't reliable? Who do you know that, and this could be your mentors, this could be people you work with, it could be anybody, but if you are going to collaborate with somebody, do you know that they are going to hold up their end of the bargain, and continue working with them or not, if not. And so that's going to make your life easier or harder based on, how you navigate those things too. I'm a huge proponent of multiple mentors inside and outside of your specific field. And it could be at your university or not, whatever that looks like. It's always good to have different voices, just to kind of help you in whatever ways that you might need help. Because sometimes we just need somebody who's not connected at all to what we're doing to really see it from a different perspective. Make an effort to check in with your peers, right? So the people that you graduate with, or other people that you might not be as close with, that you're not having, you don't have a direct, project that you're working with at that time, but that they're working on something. I have a friend who, is down in South Carolina, and he was, applying for some jobs and doing some other things. And so I would check out on him. How's it going? Do you need any help? And he would do the same thing for me. And also I joined a writing group that kind of came out of another project that I was working on. And so we decided, hey, do we want to keep working together and just offer some support? And so we don't meet we we intended to meet every other week, but sometimes things come up. And so we kind of meet when we can. But we also have hopped on some papers of each other's. We've given advice on teaching presentations, lots of different things. And so that's been really helpful to have that too. And then it can help us get work done. So it helps us
kind of that
stay
accountability buddy.
Yes, exactly. I definitely say maintaining your organizational membership, so AMFT or NCFR or whatever you're a part of, ASECT, and attend your events, attend the events that you can, especially the in-person ones when they're available. I can't go to AMFT this year and I'm really bummed about it. Yeah, because now that it's every 3 years or something in person, it's more challenging because the interactional style online is just not quite the same. So, it's especially attending those in-person events is really good. And I'm also a big proponent of showing your appreciation to others in any way that you can. When you know that they're doing something that matters, that they have something that is really big in their lives, that they, did something really well with, or something came back around where, you had a mentor or a teacher say something to you and then it came full circle and you said it to your students. Come back to them and say, hey, I just taught that to them this week. It's a really cool thing to hear from that perspective. So, kind of bringing that back to them, I think is kind of good karma, if you will.
Yeah, I like that idea. I definitely have some of those moments, so need to reach out to some past professors and let them know.
Yeah. I had one this week, so that's my sign that I should go do that.
That's awesome. I think, we don't show enough appreciation just being in the grind of academia sometimes. So I also I want to be more intentional in the future to ask colleagues if they want me to nominate them for something, nominate them for an award or anything like that. I think the moment you start building that mentorship or connection network outside of your university, Joyce, you'll see there's a lot more opportunities that come up because people start getting to know you. They start getting to know about your work. They might send people to you that are interested in kind of the same things you are, the same topics, all right? Opportunities for presentations might come up, for workshops, for speaking engagements, right? All those cool, fun things that we do. So yeah, I think Dr. Nedela gave you some great ideas to go off of. All right. Joyce, can you tell me from all the things we talked about today, one thing that you're taking away from our conversation?
Definitely that putting myself out there, because when there is help, like I don't really know how to make a syllabi. Can I look at yours? Can I get some ideas? As well as the opportunity to work with somebody else or be mentored. There's nothing wrong with asking. I had started putting myself forward at in-person events. I'm very shy naturally. And so even taking that next step of like, okay, I can send an email. It's not bothering them. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they don't want to answer, they won't answer. And there's nothing, Yeah.
You're
no
already
loss
so
there.
busy. Yeah. You're going to forget about sending that email probably in a week or so. Yeah. Because something else will jump off. And you're doing a lot of creative things right now. So I think you got a great future ahead of you. All right. There you have it, folks. I want to say a big thank you to our fantastic guests today for sharing their experiences and their insights on learning and teaching about marriage and family therapy. I hope that the wisdom and experiences they shared will help other fellow educators and listeners on their own academic careers. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and inspiring. If you're hungry for more conversations and lessons learned about teaching systemic therapy, be sure to follow our Learning and Teaching Systemic Therapy podcast episodes on Spotify and wherever podcasts are available. We will have more episodes coming up every month, so stay tuned. And remember that at the Society for the Teaching of Marriage and Family Therapy, we believe in the power of mentorship and the importance of representation in education. If you're interested in becoming a part of our organization, or you're seeking guidance for your educational goals in the field of systemic therapy, please visit our website, stmft.coast.org. Coast is spelled COAST. And also consider joining our Facebook group community at www.facebook.com/group/STMFT. Thank you for joining us today. And until next time, keep connecting and learning with colleagues. And this is Dr. Sofia Georgiadou signing off for STMFT's Teaching and Learning Systemic Therapy.